Hey, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time at all, you're going to know that I'm a bow hunter first and an archer second. That's why when my friends get a hold of me and say, I want to pick up a stick bow, or I get messages on social media, I always tell them the same thing. Don't ask me. I'm not the guy to ask. You need a coach. Well, not everybody has a coach available, right? You might not even have a local club where you can go and rub elbows and get tips from folks. But enter our friends over at The Push. Now, Matt and Tim have put together what they call the PAC, the Push Archery Center of Knowledge. What that is online courses to help you, whether you're brand new or you've been doing it for 35 years like me. There's something for everyone. Now I partake in Tom Clum's Solid Archery Mechanics, but they also have Roots by Rod Jenkins and Jimmy Blackman and Joel Turner's Controlled Process Shooting. Now, when you get one of these courses, you got it for life. They continually add content. You go on there, there's different modules to help you work on whatever you need, but there's also a forum that you jump on there and you can chat with other students, but also the coach themselves. So talk about having a coach at the tip of your fingers. The PAC has got it. So if you're interested in getting started or interested in getting better, run on over to www.thepusharchery.com/PAC. You're not going to be sorry, but you better get after it because season's coming soon. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Stickbow Chronicles, brought to you by Black Widow Bows. What's going on, Blake?
What's up?
Oh, not much. We finally got around to getting a hold of Preston and MTN Physio, and it's been a long time in the works. One of those names has been on the board for a while. We finally got after it.
Yeah, no, I've been wanting to get him on for a while. Just kind of kept getting pushed down the road, but no, this was one I was really looking forward to doing. If you guys remember, before our Aoudad hunt and most of the fall hunting season, I was having some pretty severe shoulder issues, and didn't happen shooting my bow or anything like that. It happened at work, but yeah, I got in touch with Preston, and long story short, he got me sorted out in very, very short order. And yeah, no, this is one we've been needing to do for a while. And if nothing else, just to, kind of get his brand out there and give people a resource to look to for some shoulder issues, and specifically pertaining to, archers.
Yeah, I didn't realize he does knees, ankles, and back and elbows. I guess I didn't realize that, but no, he's got
it's shoulders, knees, and toes.
I don't know that one. and then he's a doctor. I mean, crying out loud, we got a doctor on here. That's got to be the smartest guy we've ever had on.
I'm on here every week.
Yeah, like I said, this guy's got to be the smartest guy we've ever had on.
I have the IQ of mashed potatoes.
Well, I don't know what to say.
But no, it was a good conversation though.
Yeah, it was. I Hunt Close Trad Kill 2021, kicking that off. I just sent you the graphics. It's out there. We want to see your trad kills from January 1st to December 1st. And yeah, looking forward to seeing them. It was a great time last year. We've got all the same returning sponsors, a couple of new ones. So get those pictures in a small description over to ihuntcloseofficial@gmail.com. You're going to see the heck out of this. So yeah, and get them to that email. Don't message them to us, please. Because
clouds up the inbox.
Well, yeah, we had hundreds of them, and you get these, and you're like, you gotta send it. Anyways, it's frustrating. It's a good time though. I love seeing everybody's photos and really, really want to pump up the first trad kill. We're going to do that. We're going to break out the Sitka gear package, and that's going to go to the first trad kill. So love seeing those pictures too.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It was a lot of fun last year seeing everybody's different little stories and what happened. Don't get too lengthy on your description, but little short paragraph telling us kind of what went down is fine. I enjoy reading them. So
Yep. And that's about all I got, man. What do you got going on?
I think that's it.
I finally got a hold of one of those knives, man. Those things are sweet. That Iron Will, what is it? K1, K2, K12?
Yeah, K1 ultralight knife. We can plug those here real quick. So we've got some knives from Iron Will. He makes a K1 ultralight knife, kind of geared towards mountain hunters, weight conscious folks. But it weighs 1 ounce without the paracord wrap, but it feels like a real knife.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like a cheap, flimsy little knife. It's actually a knife you can get down and do some work with, and it holds its edge extremely well, much like his broadheads do. And I've been using it a couple of years now, and yeah, I love it.
No, it was way more than I expected. He told me 1 ounce, and I'm thinking, but yep, it's gonna be in my bino pack here in 3 days.
Yeah, so if anybody wants one, we've got a bunch of them with the Stickbow Chronicles logo engraved on it. Bill was nice enough to send some of those over. So you want one, message us or whatever. We should have them thrown up on the website at some point here. So I believe they're going to be $134.95. So get a hold of us if you want one. They're awesome knives. I took mine to Colorado last year, went through my whole mule deer, through a buddy's elk, and I never skipped a beat. So pretty handy little knives.
Right on. Well, should we roll it?
Yeah, that's all I got. I just I'm glad we finally got Preston on here. I think this is, well, we've had several messages of people asking us to do this podcast specifically, and
I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't, after talking to him. I mean, not that I had any reservations, but man, I wouldn't hesitate reaching out to that guy. Doing it over Zoom. I think he's got a great deal going on there. Gearing towards archers, bow hunters, and hunters. So, big thanks to the sponsors for helping us to put this together every week. Kifaru International, the Footed Shaft, Selway Archery, Backwoods Grind Coffee Company, and of course, the fine folks at Black Widow Bows. That's all I got, man.
All right, let's get out of here.
Roger out. You want to kick it off, Blake?
Yeah, so this is a podcast that Rob and I kind of had penciled in for a while. We've been wanting to do one on shoulder health, and Preston here is Dr. Preston, Dr. Ward.
Dr. Ward, yeah, Preston. You can call me Preston.
He helped me out. I had what we kind of figured out was a rotator cuff strain, and it was kind of the goofiest thing. It didn't even happen shooting my bow. I've never had any shoulder issues to speak of. I've always had really, really strong shoulders, and including shooting my bow. I've never had any shoulder issues at all. And then just kind of a freak deal at work. I picked up a 4-inch high pressure hose above my head, which is, I don't know, maybe 50 pounds or something like that, 40 pounds. Not a lot of weight. And I guess it just tweaked it in a funny way. And I actually got a hold of you through Bill from Iron Will, and he connected me with you. And so we did a Zoom meeting, did a few quick movements to kind of diagnose where the pain was coming from, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It seemed like they're pretty quick, and sent me some exercise bands and some exercises to do, and started kind of ramping up shooting my bow, and just a little bit at a time. And I mean, it was within 2 or 3 weeks, I felt like 100 times better. So why don't you, to start off, kind of go into, your background and what you do specifically now to help archers specifically?
Yeah, thank you. So my background is ever since I can remember, kind of grew up in the outdoor hunting field, I guess, industry. I can remember from like being 2-3 years old, we'd go packing in with the mules. We have a lot of mules and horses, and we'd ride in. And so I can always remember hunting. And then anyways, and ended up hunting a lot, doing mostly rifle hunting. I started getting into archery hunting when I was about 16, 17 years old. I drew out a limited entry elk tag and never had a bow, never shot a bow before that. And by accident, I drew out this tag. And so my brother and I were like, well, we either forfeit our tags or we go buy a bow. So I went and bought a bow. I was just down with the USA Archery team. So I'm on staff with them now. I'll kind of get into that, but I was down there talking to them, and my draw length was it was probably like, they set me up for this bow. It was probably, I'm going to say 31, 32 inches. I'm only 5'8". So my draw length was way off, but anyways, I ended up shooting a bull. It was pretty cool. But, so I got into archery that way. Ended up going to school here at the University of Utah, for physical therapy. And after that, I was shooting a lot more, had some more free time, and was going to these ranges shooting. And a lot of people were complaining of shoulder pain, back pain, all sorts of things. And I just started questioning, are you guys doing anything about it? Well, no, it just either goes away or it doesn't go away. And I just kind of deal with it. And I'm like, there's exercises you can do. There's not just exercises. You could see a physical therapist. And so after doing my residency program, after graduate school, after receiving my doctorate there, I ended up opening my own business, opening up MTN Physio, which was just specializing in archers, bow hunters, and what I call mountain athletes. So basically all you hunters and everything like that. Just because I wanted to be, really, the reason why I did it is there wasn't a facility dedicated specifically to archers, bow hunters, hunters. And as you all know, there's specific muscle groups, there's specific exercises, specific things you need to do. And especially for your backcountry hunters as well, fitness is a huge part of it. And so jumped into that and offer a full service physical therapy clinic here in Salt Lake. And then Blake, like you mentioned, you reached out, or Bill got in touch with you, and then you reached out to me. And so I do predominantly a lot of my work virtually, which is kind of nice with Zoom and the different technology now to be able to really do an assessment and evaluation, and then provide, do a consult that way, and then provide exercises or the treatment, or if not, at least getting the people to the right resource. And so having contacts in multiple states is something that I do as well, and make sure that people are either going to the right orthopedic surgeon, getting the right imaging. And so it's not always just what I do. It's a matter of kind of directing people the care too. So.
Well,
go ahead, Rob.
Blake, if I can jump in, I can say, I just want to stress to the listeners, we had a hunt coming up. We were within a month or 6 weeks from a hunt, and Blake, understandably, he was just about panicked. And immediately you think it's going to be bad. You're talking surgery. So it was amazing what you did with Blake and the turnaround. And I had to question his toughness, because I'm like, dude, was it really that bad if you were ready to go?
Man, it was strange. I was pretty convinced that maybe my rotator cuff was partially torn or something, because I literally could not draw my bow back. I couldn't get it more than halfway back. And, hell, it was coming down to, I was just going to have to bring a gun or shoot it with a compound, just because I could not shoot my recurve. And, it was pretty amazing how quickly, it was literally like a 10-minute Zoom call, and you're like, yep, strained rotator cuff, and is what I think it is. Do this, and this. I'll send you some stretch bands, send you some exercises, and we'll kind of start ramping up your shooting here in a week or two. And it was literally within 2 to 3 weeks that I could shoot my bow and not, there was still some pain there, but I mean, it was bearable. And as I started shooting my bow more and more and more, it just strengthened that tendon back up. And I mean, now I'm pretty well back to 100% at this point. And, man, I was getting pretty worried there. I thought something maybe was pretty bad wrong. And, it goes to show you that, I mean, of course, my mind went to the worst place whenever I think my shoulder's jacked up. I think, I may have to drop down to 40 or 45 pound limbs or something just to try and continue hunting the way I like to hunt. And, I mean, I think a lot of people are guilty of trying to tough through things, and myself included. And I mean, I dealt with that. How long did I deal with that, Rob? Probably a couple, 3 months.
Yeah.
Longer than that, maybe. I mean, through most of whitetail season, I had to hunt with a compound, a lot of it. And, just a quick 15, 20-minute Zoom call. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I was, back to shooting my recurve. So, I guess what all services do you offer specifically? If you want to kind of go through that, if there's any listeners who are having shoulder issues or any of those things, how could they go about getting in touch with you, and just kind of go through that a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, I can do that. No, I can't. And I appreciate that. I can't stress enough though, like from the physical therapy side of things, it's like a personalized evaluation, like an assessment is, and you kind of mentioned that you're like, I didn't want to stop hunting the way that I hunt, and that's the reason why I offer this service of, doing evaluation, personal, I guess I'd say tailorized exercise programs, because I don't want people to change how they hunt. I honestly want people to hunt for however long they want to hunt. If they want to hunt until they're, 60, 70, 80, Bill, he reached out to me as well. And, same thing. He's like, I'm doing good, but I just want to make sure that I can pull my bow back and hunt with my bow until I'm, 75 years old, however old, and so anyways, that's one of the things, is making sure that one thing that I offer is just like, treatment programs to make sure that they are maintaining that shoulder health throughout their life. And so oftentimes it comes down to, shoot, like you said, a 15, 20, 30-minute evaluation over the phone or over Zoom, just making sure that everything's moving properly so that there's nothing that's tight, nothing that's, weak, going through all those exercises and that evaluation. And then other services, like I'll do 12-week programs basically, and put together something for 12 weeks and make sure I kind of go through those exercises with them. And so people who kind of want more of like a personal one-on-one fitness, regularly, I do that often. And then I often do, a lot of the times it's, something like you, Blake, where see the patient, give them some exercises, follow up with them maybe 3-4 weeks later, or a handful of times is all. And then they're usually doing really well. And so those are some of the major.
I want to stop you there, because you talked about longevity. And I think that is especially specific to traditional archers, just because of the fact that, especially, 30 and 40 years ago, a lot of guys shooting 65, 70 pound limbs. And obviously I wasn't around them, but I've talked to enough people that was kind of the norm back then. A lot of people shoulder pulling, there's a lot of information out there to kind of alleviate a lot of that now. But I mean, in traditional archery specifically, I don't know, Rob, how many people do you know or have you heard of that just basically had to quit bow hunting altogether due to shoulder health issues?
Well, I wouldn't say that I know many that have quit altogether, but just in my circle of friends, everybody has rotator cuff surgery. And, Pete, he's 80 something years old and in probably his last year bow hunting, but he was able to, pull 60-pound bows most of his life. But take it one step further. When I was in construction, and Blake, you probably see it too, almost everybody ends up with, some shoulder issue, and generally rotator cuff. So even because what we do is tough on our shoulders, life is tough on your shoulders too, I guess is where I'm going with that. But so now the services you're talking about, you're doing that online, you're doing that virtually, right? So like, when Blake, he's getting, one-on-one personal, instruction, just through Zoom, right?
Yeah. And that's what I wanted is, so having done like receiving the doctorate degree and then residency and all those things and understanding imaging and basically pharmaceutical and kind of the whole gamut there. Like when a patient comes to me, I want to make sure that I'm providing them basically all information, everything that they can do. And so maybe someone comes to me who, has a bad shoulder that they can't even pull back their bow. And they're like, I'm getting surgery. What should I expect? And so oftentimes those patients, I'll kind of walk them through this. Or you mentioned, Rob, the majority of people will have some sort of shoulder injury or pain throughout their life. And so sometimes it's just a few little exercises here and there, but sometimes it is directing them like, you need to go get an injection or you need to do this, and so it's kind of guiding them to the right thing, all for the same purpose, to just keep people hunting, to keep people shooting, to keep people doing that, because at this moment there's not, someone designated for that. And so that's why the role that I took on is like, I want to just be there to help people enjoy what they want to do. Well,
and I think kind of I don't know how familiar you are with like the NTS system with USA Archery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the system that Tom Klum teaches, and it's the draw cycle and everything is specific to trying to put all of that tension in your back as much as possible. How important do you think that is for people to, obviously if you've been doing it one way for a super, super long time, it's a hard habit to break. And I understand that, but especially if you're starting from the beginning, kind of building on that block of, this has nothing to do with aiming methods or anything like that, but just something as simple as how to draw the bow correctly, where to transfer the weight to, and all of those things.
Yeah, 100%. That's, I think, starting from, the very basics of how you hold the bow, where that pressure is on your hand. So that's definitely things that I teach about as well when I'm going through and just watching and, watching how they do it and everything. But I think it's super critical. There's a lot of experts out there that, could do a lot of good coaching and everything like that, on good form and everything, but it's super critical to make sure you're doing that, to make sure you're drawing back with those with the correct muscles. Trad, I'd say, really honestly, compound, trad, it doesn't really matter. It's always making sure that you're doing things correctly, biomechanically speaking. So, looking from more of the joint perspective and joint health. For me, when I see someone draw back with, maybe let's say a really low shoulder here, and then they have to come back up here, and thinking about the biomechanics there of having to get up to anchor, but now they're holding back so much weight. It's like, let's try to get you to draw back with this high shoulder to begin with. And so from a biomechanical perspective, that's the one thing that I really like to do when I have some software on my phone and everything. Oftentimes I do that either online, I'll have someone like video it, and then I'll kind of draw some angles and everything, making sure that they're doing it correctly. Or if they're here in Salt Lake, then I'll kind of, video them and make sure that, again, everything, all these angles look formed, because there is a correct form. Some people, there's some variance for sure, but strengthening those muscles. And I'd say it's not just a matter of strength either. I'd say the majority of my patients, I was just working with a patient, another archer who, he's like, I've been trying the strengthening for a long time. It just doesn't seem to get better. Well, a lot of it was the mobility issue. He had some very tight muscles in the back, a lot of those rotator cuff, and he needed some very specific stretching or soft tissue work, with like people, massage it and everything like that, roll on a tennis ball and stuff. And so there's different things like that people need.
Well, and that's actually one thing that I want to talk to you about, because that's a definite issue of mine. And, started out getting coached by Tom and Tom has a great understanding of biomechanics and things like that. But I have some mobility issues, and it does create some tension in my shoulder just because I have a hard time rolling over into my back all the way. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's certainly an issue that I have, is upper body mobility is a bit of a problem. Let's go into, Rob, if you don't have anything else.
No, I would just pile on to exactly. That's where my interest is right now, is mobility, and I've certainly I'm better than I was 3 years ago, and it just really opened my eyes to, like, how many people are just like me, just locked up. So yeah, take it away, man.
No, that's a big issue I have as well, and I've always been that way. I'm just not a very flexible person. But Preston, if you don't mind, let's go into maybe some just day-to-day specific exercises, if you don't mind, that maybe people could do. If you don't mind touching on that.
No, not at all. No, I think it's important to have, and I'd say this specifically for like bow hunters, and I'll say this again, is I see a lot of times that people are more tight in let's say their draw arm. So they're tight in that arm posteriorly. And so different exercises people can do are like some posterior stretching, right? So there's some specific exercises. I actually have some up of my YouTube videos of a specific archery stretch where they're stretching that posterior capsule. It's a great exercise, great stretch. You can do, I'll honestly tell a lot of people to, like, especially if they're rehabbing back from an injury, is do a warm up before they start shooting their bow. I very rarely tell people to like drop down their pounds. Sometimes it depends if there's a certain injury, but I very rarely say drop down your poundage. I want people more to keep that poundage, but then start strengthening other muscles and everything, build up into that strength, and then be able to start pulling their bow back. And so some specific exercises like your rotator cuff exercises, which are basically your the rotation type of exercises with the resistance bands. It's funny, people, I sell those resistance bands on my website and everything just because people are like, I'm going to the gym, I don't need to use those. But it's honestly like those resistance bands provide a lot of really good targeted exercises. And you don't need a lot of weight. I'm sure as you exercises, you're like, maybe these are pretty simple and easy, but you don't need a lot of weight with that. But strengthening that rotator cuff for endurance is really important when drawing back your bow. And it's not so much that if you start diving into the anatomy, it's not that the rotator cuff, people often think like the rotator cuff helps me, it draws back my bow. It's not. It's a lot of like that posterior deltoid, rhomboids, low trap. So a lot of those bigger muscles that are helping you draw back your bow, but it's those smaller stabilizers that are very important in providing that mobility. And we can kind of talk about that in a different form as well, as like when people are talking mobility, well, what's limiting them? Is it, is it the anatomy? So the joint anatomy itself, maybe we'll say some arthritis. Is it, there's some tight muscles? And, there could be a lot of different things. And so that's why we just need to check all that. But anyway, some specific exercises are like your rotator cuff exercises, your internal, external rotation. You can do it up into, 90 degrees, we'll say. You can do I'm always telling people to do their rows, right? So bringing their shoulders back. Rob, you kind of dove into this, that a lot of times mobility, people are kind of all just hunched forward on their computer. And a lot of it's just bringing people back, bringing people into their back pockets, basically bringing those scapula back so that they have that mobility to kind of move. And then another thing, just quickly, that I always like to look at, and it's important, is the thoracic mobility. So if people are kind of hunched over and they don't have that thoracic mobility, then they can't raise their arms overhead. And so thoracic mobility, like making sure that their spine is limber, is another thing that's really good to do on a daily basis. And so daily, I'm always telling people, do some thoracic mobilizations, do some rows, do some rotator cuff stuff. It doesn't need to be a lot. It doesn't need to be a long exercise program either. Just, 10, 15 minutes, maybe, of just some basic exercises to keep those shoulders healthy.
And is that something that you would recommend people do kind of daily or maybe every time they go to the gym? Even on leg day or whatever?
Yeah, I think so. Probably not so much on leg day. If they're going to go shoot their bow, then I'd say, yeah, it's probably a good idea to just kind of keep some. I guess I fall under the school more of when I have people warm up and when I have people like go to the gym and do some shoulder stuff, especially if they're going to shoot their bow, I want them activating those muscles so that so not so much necessarily just statically stretching. I think we have a lot more evidence to support a dynamic kind of warm up to those muscles. And so that's what I tell people to do to make sure. And that's what the kind of evidence supports is more of a dynamic plan. So if people are going to do leg day and they're going to shoot their bow later, then I'd say, yeah, do some of these rotator cuff exercises just to kind of activate those muscles. Really what you're activating is, you're activating those motor neurons, you're activating those pathways from the brain to that motor, or that brain to that muscle, and really kind of solidifying that. And so, other than that, what I recommend is, if people are just kind of trying to maintain no injury, just, want to make sure their shoulders are healthy, 3-4 days a week, just kind of working on a few things.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people that I almost have to warm up a little bit before I shoot my bow. Like I said earlier, just because of lack of mobility. That's what makes hunting in the cold for me so hard sometimes is I get very stiff and creaky. Yeah. So I have to literally pick up my bow and draw it back every once in a while just to keep everything bending and moving. Rob, do you have anything else as far as that goes?
It wasn't something that I was targeting was shoulder mobility, but when I started going to the gym about 3 years ago regularly, probably 3 years ago regularly, the guys were joking with me. The trainers were joking with me and making the comment, well, you don't have that mobility, some of the overhead stuff. And I was just kind of like, what, and through time, it was probably a year later, one of the trainers, Nick, said out of the blue, he's like, dude, you move so much better, your shoulders and doing overhead squats and stuff. You're moving so much better. So that was what really started opening my eyes to just how locked up I am. And then, you Blake, I think you had mentioned earlier, kind of threw it to me about the guys shooting heavy bows for years. And Preston, I've been doing it for 35 years, and it was the norm. Recurves were normally 60s, 65s, 70. My first good bow was 70-pound recurve. So there's a lot of people out there, my age, that are probably a little bit jacked up because of that.
Yeah.
Well, and I was just going to say, I would imagine it's not even as much of the poundage. It's how the draw was taught back then is much more shoulder heavy. I think that's kind of where because anymore I shoot about 58 pounds and I think I'm on the upper end of what's considered somewhat normal. Most people now are down around 50 pounds for the most part, but just how you're drawing that 65, 70 pound bow is probably more important than the weight of it. I would think.
Yeah.
Well, now, what's the most common complaint or injury you have people reaching out to you about?
That's a good question. I honestly see it all I'll see a lot of upper back pain. I think probably mostly the largest complaint is shoulder pain. Makes sense. But, and then the shoulder pain, typically I'll kind of dive into those. And then the other one would probably be more knee pain. So those probably are the three big areas: knee pain for my hunters and everything like that. Back pain more for hunters, and then shoulder pain for just people who are just doing archery or hunting as well. Shoulder, typically what I'll see some rotator cuff tendonitis, rotator cuff tendinopathies is what we'll call it. Subacromial pain, which is basically pain underneath, like kind of the anterior, the front of, or the side of the shoulder. people will feel it there. And so another big thing that I see with the subacromial pain, it's kind of comprehensive, where it includes the rotator cuff, some of the soft tissue around it, and then the bicep tendon. That bicep tendon gets pretty irritated, especially in archers, it seems like. And it's just from like increasing draw weight. It's from the repetitive, motion, especially if they're not drawing correctly, then you'll see some of that irritation through that bicep tendon. And so there's different techniques, different soft tissue techniques that I teach, and I'll walk people through to make sure that they are addressing that. For my virtual patients, my ones here in Salt Lake and everything, then I'll obviously do a lot of that. But, and then as far as diving into the back, probably one of the more typical things is really honestly just probably a lack of core strength. Most people these days aren't as active, I guess I'd say, or most people, and that's why I really enjoy working with a lot of the hunters and stuff like that, is because they are active. They're just not, they're going to the gym and they're doing, squats and deadlifts, but maybe they're not targeting those specific core muscles. And so a lot of times it's core strength, and especially, and that also, I guess I'd say, if we look at the data, the research, like 80% of people will have, back pain in their life. And when you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's mostly core strength. And so that's kind of the population that I'm seeing is 20 to, 55, 60-year-olds. And so I see a lot more of that. And then if I quickly dive into the knee pain, a lot of times it's just the thing that we call, so clinically speaking, patellofemoral pain, which is more anterior knee pain. And that happens a lot. I see that a lot from, like I said, my hunters who are trying to either they're hiking a lot, they're preparing for the hunting season, or they went hunting, they kind of twisted their knee, or they kind of, we'll say, jacked up their knee. And then it just didn't get better over the wintertime. It's now summer again. They're trying to get it better to hunt again. And so I'll see those patients. And a lot of that comes down to some weakness that I'll target specifically with some like core and hip exercises.
Yeah. How important are those exercises that isolate certain like core exercises and things like that? I know kind of back going through high school, playing football and things like that, we always got preached, squat, deadlift, overhead press, bench, those are your power clean.
Yeah.
The main exercises, and that's what we focused on is lifting heavy and getting strong. And I kind of took that into my 20s as well and continued kind of doing more of those powerlifting type workouts, like 5 sets of 5, really heavy weight, the main core lifts, really not focusing at all on, number one, stretching, which is a lot of my problem now. But number two, those small little isolation exercises, how important is that for people? You talk about the core, and that's something that I definitely need to get better about, and going to the gym in general. But is that core, I don't think people realize how important that core is to your lower back health and even, just overall physical fitness. Your core is kind of the building block
center,
of everything,
foundation,
everything's built on. Yeah, there you go.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's where, like, when people have knee pain, I bring it back to the core. When people have back pain, I'm there at the core. When, I'll see people with ankle pain, they've rolled their ankle, or just they have, some of my hunters, some of my patients have flat feet, and it goes back to the core. And you could even argue like shoulder health and just thoracic mobility. Like, are you doing any core stuff, and so those, to answer your question, how important are those key exercise? How important are those exercises that target those specific groups? I think so. They're critical. I mean, that's honestly what gets people better, I would say, when I'm seeing patients and I'm doing these evaluations and I see that they're weak, or maybe, for example, if you just think about hunting situations and in general, let's see, Blake, you're there in Texas, but you do a lot of hunting elsewhere, mountainous hunting, correct?
Yeah, I try to make at least one trip a year to the mountains, maybe two.
And then Rob, you're there up in Idaho, and you do some.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of flat ground here.
Right. And so here in Utah, I mean, a lot of the stuff, and I think a lot of and it doesn't matter whether it's you're hunting flat ground or, back east or anywhere like that. But I just bring that up is a lot of these hunters are, hiking 3, 4, 5 miles with heavy packs, or they, tag out and they're trying to come home. And let's just take the knee, for example. If over the course of 4 or 5 miles with a 50-pound pack on, sometimes heavier if you have game in it and everything, and that knee is continuously, we'll say it's tracking abnormally. So poor mechanics there over 4 or 5 miles, you're going to have a very irritated knee. And that's what I see a lot of is those patients that just have this really poor control over their knee. So it doesn't necessarily even come down to yes, there's some strength components, but it's not even just strength. It comes down to also good motor control, or, muscle memory is another word for that, or, just neuromotor control. That's what I do a lot of training for is I'll have people doing specific exercises, those specific groups over and over and over again with their heavy packs on, making sure that they're kind of ready for hunting season, make sure they're ready for those activities that could bother it.
Another thing that jumped out at me a couple years ago is we go to the gym, or you run, or you ride a bike, whatever. You're doing these cardio, you're trying to build muscles. I grabbed my pack one day, I don't know, it could have been in June or something, and went for a training hike. And I'm fortunate enough to have a very rugged, steep, it's really rocky, a trail here in town that we can hike. And so when I got done, I realized I was in pretty good shape, but my ankles and my shins weren't used to. It was my ankles were tired, and so it clicked the light bulb on. We can do all kinds of stuff, but until you put that pack on and start walking, there's the little muscles or ligaments or tendons or whatever that aren't getting worked.
Yeah, I think that's. I'm getting ready to do something specifically on. I think just lower, even below the knee, leg, strengthening, conditioning, and stuff like that, and rehab or prehab, I guess I'd say, because I think another thing that I don't see a lot of people doing is, like you mentioned, some of those lower muscles that you can just condition, similar to, we'll say, the rotator cuff. You can condition it regularly so that you throw on a pack, you're not as sore, you're not as all that. You can throw a pack on, and I always recommend this for, everyone out there who's getting ready to go hunting, you should be thinking about that. I mean, if we're already May right now, June, July, the hunts start in 12 weeks, right? June, July, August, I guess August, the middle of August is when they start here in Utah. So, I got my bison hunt starting the first week of August. So I have 8 weeks basically until May, June, I guess 12 weeks there. If I can do the math right, but people should throw on packs and they should start doing that early. But it's not just that, balance exercises. How many times are you guys there on the mountain, glassing and, just standing there on one foot, you're just standing there. Glassing is a really good exercise, but standing there on one foot, when you're training and making sure that all those little tiny ankle exercises, all those little ankle muscles are doing well. Another thing I wanted to bring up is, oftentimes the boots and the shoes and stuff that we wear, I think, are very, very supportive. For the most part, I believe there's some really good boots now that people use. And I have found that I always recommend people having a good solid boot for carrying heavy loads and everything like that. It doesn't matter, which company you use. There's a lot of good ones out there. But are you out of those also training those muscles? Because I've found out a lot of patients have foot pain, even though they're using, orthotics and all these other things to kind of support it. Well, what they're lacking is that foundation, that core, basically, that we go back to. Not the core as in like the abs, the core meaning their ankle stuff. Like, is that strong? So
that's really interesting, because I battled feet problems for literally decades. I mean, it was always my weak spot. And until I went and had a real set of orthotics, is that the right word? Insoles built. That was, that changed everything for me. But yeah, I do think the ankle and all that are probably overlooked.
Yeah, definitely. Those orthotics can help for certain conditions and everything like that, but certainly like those strengthening up those, just positioning your foot in good alignment and stuff is good. And that's what a lot of those exercises do too. And just takes some work to maintain. But yeah, I think people having good boots and having, training with their packs on and thinking ahead. That's where I run into a lot of patients, is usually maybe not thinking ahead, or they just get busy with the summer, family vacations, everything else. And life gets busy and they just don't have the time to invest. Then they go hunting, they kind of injure themselves. They come back from hunting and then they're like, all right, let's get this better. But starting to think about it early.
How do you feel about ibuprofen? Because that's pretty much what everybody does.
Vitamin I, right? It's good. No, I think certainly it has its place depending on, oops, sorry about that. Certainly it has its place depending on what's going on. But I think actually interesting, I know a few people that will take it, and when they go hunting and, way back in, they're taking that regularly at night just to make sure they can wake up in the morning feeling okay.
Blake's raising his hand.
That's not the greatest, Blake, but people do it, and that's fine. I understand it. Hopefully, I guess I'd say more from a natural health perspective, I would say let's try to stay away from that, just taking it to take it, but making sure you're conditioning and everything else during the season. But again, that just takes time. No one has time to invest every single day towards exercise and fitness, and you don't need to, but certainly having the right exercises and knowing kind of where you're at. And I'll bring this up as well. This is my argument for why I think individualized, like personal consults or evaluations are important. Everyone's different. Blake, Rob, you probably both need a little bit of different focus. And so making sure people get like a tailored program is super important to me and kind of my theory of how I practice and everything like that. And, some people are stiff. Some people need to focus, we'll say 5-6 days a week on their rotator cuff. Some people need to focus, only 2-3 days on their shoulder, and they need to focus 4 or 5 more days on their, low back or their upper back and mobility. And so everyone kind of needs a little bit different. And so that's where it's really important to just make sure like you're getting what you need.
Well, I think it's important, especially for hunters and mountain hunters and this is, again, I'm talking down on myself directly, but there's a difference between functional strength and just gym strength. I could squat almost 600 pounds at one time, but I could scratch my ass. So there wasn't a whole lot of functionality to that other than, in other words, it wasn't helping me in the mountains or anything. It's good to be strong, but you want to be functionally strong where it's actually doing you some good in all the right places. And, I doing those isolation exercises seemed like it was kind of like it clicked the light bulb for me, just because like I started feeling muscle groups there that I wasn't really aware of before. And it almost just feels like you just feel more stable almost. I kind of wanted to touch on that quick because, you brought it up earlier, but I just am, what do you think about that as far as functional strength versus just brute force, just gym strength, dumb strength?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, functional strength, definitely functional training. When I guess I speak from just, what I do and what I see is patients often come to me after they've been doing some of that gym strength, things like that. Their shoulder doesn't seem to be getting better. And so then what I do is dive into it a little bit more and do that very specific training, specific exercises. And then we'll take, for example, a lot of the people that come to me are archers, and they're like, I just want to be able to, draw my bow back. Okay, well, let's start a plan that incorporates, like, you've been doing the gym stuff. Now we're doing the PT, the physical therapy, the rehab side of things. And then we start doing some strength and conditioning. And then let's start grabbing that bow and let's starting you shoot. And this is when you're going to shoot, and kind of give them a plan of when they'll kind of do it. And so just whatever sport they want, hunting, especially, like, I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to me now. They're like, hey, I've got a hunt coming up. What should I be doing? Well, like, what's your hunt? Where are you going to be hunting? What type of land? Everything else. Let's get you prepared for that. Maybe it's, most of the people are hunting like these steep mountains and stuff like that, and they just want to be conditioned for it. And so making sure that they have a specific plan that's very functional, that they're doing, stair training, step ups. They're doing it all with weighted packs. They're doing ruck marches. They're doing all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, the main reason I take ibuprofen whenever I'm in the mountains is from headaches from the altitude, actually. It's not so much joint pain or knee pain. It's just headaches from being at altitude, going from 700 feet one day to, 12.5 the next. It takes it out of you. Yeah. Speaking of that, I mean, I know this gets brought up a lot, but guys coming from back east going out west, I mean, is there really anything that you can do to prepare you for what's about to happen?
That elevation, or
yes.
Just you're going to what to expect?
Elevation specifically, because that's what kicks my tail.
Yeah. Things that can definitely help with that. I mean, I guess before you go, and I'll kind of just ask you some questions. What's your routine look like going up to that? He
eats fast food and rides around in a truck. I can answer that.
So you have a good routine.
And he gets away with it because he's 29. So there you go. It's all out there.
He's not that far off. No, I typically am trying to do, stuff on the stair stepper as much as possible. And there is one specific hill out at the place that I hunt that's, I don't know, it looks like a fire ant mound compared to some of the crap we hike up in Colorado, but it's what I've got. So just generally trying to, even if it's, shed hunting or just doing some walking around in the spring, I will almost always throw my pack on and just have some weight in it. And short of that, I've pretty much come to terms with the fact that it's just going to suck.
Just embrace the suck, huh?
Basically. Yeah.
No, it's, and I think more from a health perspective, like we joke about the, eating fast food, driving around in a truck. You can train all you want. And I always suggest this, whether you're in Texas or Utah or Idaho or, Pennsylvania, wherever it is, find some hills to go and do some weighted pack carries, put a heavy pack on, put your pack on like you're going to be, carrying something. But at the same time, I think from a general perspective, like a general health perspective, I want to know what people are doing for nutrition, eating, what are they doing? More vitamins are they taking? And then as well, what I'm really trying to get at is how much water are you, drinking? That's one of the biggest things I'd say in preparation for altitude is you can do all the physical stuff that I recommend, like I mentioned, but water, like ultimately you should really be planning 2 or 3 weeks in advance to starting to increase your water intake. Maybe you increase it by a couple cups on that first week, and then 3 or 4 cups, the next couple of weeks. And you're just really trying to, most days, or most people nowadays, I don't get as much water as I should. I don't drink enough water on a daily basis. I know preparing for a hunt, this is probably something that I don't think about, but people really should be. When I was planning so a couple of years ago, I hiked with my family up to the tallest peak in Utah, which is Kings Peak. I can't remember how many, 13,000, something like that. 2-3 weeks in advance, because I was planning for that, I was preparing. But when a hunt comes, I'm prepared. Like my pack is packed 4 weeks in advance. I'm so excited for it. But I'm not really thinking about the physical aspect as far as like all summer I've been preparing physically, but hydration wise, you got to be planning that 2-3 weeks in advance. And that should help with the headaches, the altitude, everything else like that. There's not much you can do to gain elevation besides do it in wherever you're at, but drink plenty of water, drink, more water than you think, those 2-3 weeks heading up to it.
That's good tips, because I definitely do not drink enough water and drink way too much Red Bull.
A little bit of water in there, but yeah, drink more water.
Well, Preston, is there anything that we missed that you want to get out there as far as just information and just things to think about?
What do you do with the USA Archery team? Why don't you touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a new thing that I've got going on, which is really fun. Led to some good opportunities to go to travel internationally with them. And so one of my patients actually recommended that I would apply for the position there. And so I'm traveling internationally with the USA Archery team, the para archery team, and the able-bodied team, and able to go to some of the World Cups and everything like that with them. And so just while I'm there, it's interesting talking to them. A lot of them are hunters as well, and kind of see what they do. And it's fun to make those connections, but as well, like just these archers, are shooting 150, 250 arrows, we'll say 5 days a week sometimes,
Wow.
6 days a week. They're shooting a lot. They're shooting every single day, and they're shooting, multiple matches, multiple ends, everything like that. And so it's been fun to kind of jump into like the target world. I don't know if you guys shoot any like spot targets for practice or whatever, but I would say a lot of the hunters I don't think do, but I definitely recommend, like, for people, all my hunters, like if you want to get good at shooting archery, like these guys, they shoot all the time. They still have a lot of orthopedic conditions. And so that's why I go with them and I travel with them and make sure that they're staying healthy, hydrated for sure. That, everything's working fine, and then that they're good for competition. And so we went down to Guatemala recently, and it was cool. One of the archers, he got gold medal. A couple of them got gold, silver, bronze. So it's pretty cool to help in that form. And then a couple of weeks before that, I went to Mexico with the Paralympic team, and a bunch of qualified for spots for Tokyo. And so it's pretty cool to be on that level. But again, if you want to get good, for all the hunters out there, if you want to get good at shooting your bow, you can shoot a 3D target, and that's helpful. But seriously, shoot a target face where you can kind of see and make corrections, and I think the best thing, like I've kind of got into with my compound bow, shooting a 3D, actually not a 3D, but a 3-spot Vegas, face, and shooting that and then keeping score. And then the next time trying to go beat my score, and then, try to get more X's or more 10s or whatever, so just that repetition. I think that's really good for people that want to be better hunters. And we all kind of do.
No, I think that's great advice. Shooting a Vegas face is not only humbling, but like you said, it will show you kind of where your weak spots are and where most of your misses tend to be. And then you can kind of diagnose that from there. And it's something you can do at home, or a lot of people can. You can set up a little 18-meter, 20-yard, whatever, throw a Vegas face up there. Hell, even if it's 12, 15 yards, just something, a piece of paper that you could put up there. The holes, don't heal up like they do with a 3D target. And you can see exactly where you're missing. And it gives you also a benchmark to kind of see where you're at. If you're kind of going downhill, okay, well, we need to kind of see, what we need to correct to get back to where I was. And that's something I've definitely done quite a bit of. And Rob, you shoot spot tournaments, don't you?
No, I don't have much time to. I went a couple of times this winter. They have a league here in town, but yeah, no, you're right. It's it shows you a pattern when you're done for sure. Good or bad. Looking like, oh, that looks like an improved cylinder with number 7.5 shot.
Like a dove load.
Oh.
No, but I think that's good though. I'm glad you said that, because it's obviously not everything from the tournament side transfers to hunting, but there's a lot of really good takeaways you can take from that side too. So
yeah, it's been fun. These guys, a lot of them, they are big time hunters as well, and so talking to them about hunting and trying to just talking to them about hunting and what they do, and it's fun. That target side of thing is a different animal, and those guys those target archers are intense. They have a little different focus.
Yeah, no, that's what it takes to be at that level. I mean, it's got to have that intensity about you, and mental toughness as well.
That mental toughness, I'll tell you what, that is interesting to watch these guys on that level. And it's intense. You can Google or YouTube some world archery, shoots and shoot offs and everything else. And it's intense when you can basically hear, it feels like their heartbeat, and, they can be dialed in shooting 10s, then something crazy happens and they're in a shoot off and they're shooting 6s, and you're like, what happened? And mentally, from a mental perspective, it's a lot of things. That mental game is important. Yeah, it's important and I'd honestly argue hunting, when you're faced with that large, 380 bull or whatever it is, like there's some mental exercises and toughness that you should be doing, preparing for that, there's not much that compares, but if you can just kind of get into the rhythm and shoot multiple times and shoot often, stay healthy with all the shoulders and stuff like we talked about, but shoot often and ready, so that when push comes to shove and you're there, everything is going in your favor.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, man. Plug all your stuff, plug your YouTube, all your social media stuff. Where can people find you and get a hold of you?
Thank you. Appreciate that. If I can obviously help you out, I'd love to put together programs and individualized consults and everything like that for people. You can find me at my website, www.mountainphysio.com. That's spelled MTN PHYSIO. And then on Instagram, mountain_physio. On Facebook, you can find me at Mountain Physio. And then
how about the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel, I believe is Mountain Physio as well. It should be just Mountain Physio, MTN PHYSIO. And I got videos on there, posting kind of a little mix of some hunting videos, hunting preparation, just good exercises, everything else. And so, definitely find me there, reach out to me. If anything's bugging you, then give me a shout.
What?
All right, Preston.
Hey, appreciate.
Anything else, Rob?
No, I was just gonna say, I appreciate what you do. That's really a niche area, and being bow hunters, appreciate what you diving into that.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. It's fun I think having, I know when I go to a professional, it's always good to have like-minded, hobbies, experience and things like that. And so that's what I want to do for everyone, and keep people hunting, keep people shooting and enjoying whatever it is. So if you have even questions on, should you get surgery or not, or whatever it is, just reach out to me. I'm always there to, answer questions. That's what I wanted to be there for.
Cool.
Yeah. Anybody having any issues, make sure and reach out to him. It's, he saved a hunt for me. So, don't hesitate. It's well worth it.
Well, thanks, Preston, and good luck hunting this year.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.